Princess Catherine has had a very challenging few months, and from everything sources are saying, it's only going to get worse from here. There's a story developing at Windsor right now that honestly feels like it's been building for decades. It involves the woman who spent years carefully positioning her own family within the royal orbit. The woman who quietly expanded her influence while others dealt with personal crisis. According to sources, a single decision has just shattered that carefully constructed reality. The review of the Crown estate, spearheaded quietly but decisively, led to an administrative action that lasted less than 10 minutes. Short, precise, and according to sources, the kind of conversation someone has when they've already made the decision. Sources say this move was not just a routine audit. That call, and the resulting revocation of estate privileges, was the first move in something much bigger. For years, Princess Catherine has observed the inner workings of the palace with a quiet discipline. But after facing her own profound health battles and witnessing the shifting dynamics within the family, sources suggest she has reached a point of absolute clarity about her role as the future queen. Her motivation is no longer about maintaining a polite status quo. It is about protecting the legacy of the monarchy and securing the future of her children. To understand why this is happening now, one must look at Queen Camilla and her extended family. For years, the Parker Bowles family has enjoyed unprecedented quiet integration into royal spaces, securing invitations, patronages, and access to the vast crown resources. So why now? Why after years of quiet acceptance has the line suddenly been drawn? Sources say the answer has two parts, and you need both of them to understand what's actually going on here. The first part of the answer lies in the shifting balance of institutional power. Catherine now influences decisions connected to billions in crown assets and future royal estates. All of it is moving under the direct control of her and William, with no consultation required and no approval needed from anyone else. A concrete example of this power occurred when the latest review of the Crown Estate's Grace and Favor properties was finalized. The moment Catherine took over the oversight of these reviews, certain names connected to the Parker Bowles family stopped appearing on the authorized occupancy lists. There was no public dispute, no dramatic statement, just names quietly removed from the financial and residential records. That decision sent a message that didn't need any translation. Royal commentators picked up on it immediately and noted it was causing significant ripples inside the palace. Sources suggest William approved of these decisions completely, validating Catherine's firm approach through the lens of someone who has long waited to establish a new standard of accountability. The second part of the answer is anchored to a historical tragedy that still shapes the emotional landscape of the palace. August 31st, 1997, will soon be 30 years since. Princess Diana lost her life in Paris, 30 years since a young boy had to walk behind his mother's coffin in front of the entire world. He is now 44, a father in nearly 3 decades of public life. He has never once made a direct statement connecting his feelings about Camilla to his feelings about what his mother went through. But his actions, alongside Catherine's, have been making that statement consistently for years. Sources say William and Catherine reached a point where they were done allowing institutional loyalty to override private conviction. Catherine now has access to something that is making certain people inside Buckingham Palace genuinely nervous. There is a room at Windsor Castle called the Royal Archives. No tourists, no documentary crews, no public access. What it contains is the unfiltered, unedited, privately recorded history of the British royal family. Letters, diaries, internal correspondence, the written record of what was actually happening inside the institution during the most turbulent decades. What exactly is in those archives that certain people allegedly do not want surfacing right now? The broad strokes are already public knowledge: the leak of private tapes, the coordinated media campaigns, the systematic undermining of a vulnerable young mother. All of that is documented, analyzed, and debated. But what sources suggest is in those archives goes beyond the broad strokes. It's the specificity, the private, contemporaneous written record of who knew what, when they knew it, who facilitated the media leaks, and how. Faced with this reality, Camilla's circle is seeing their situation deteriorate rapidly. Catherine has been using her administrative influence with a precision that people inside Camilla's circle are only now fully appreciating. access to crown events, proximity to official royal occasions. Invitations that had previously been extended to members of Camilla's wider family have been quietly withdrawn. Appearances where the Parker Bowles children and siblings had expected to be present have been restructured without explanation. Nothing that generates a headline on its own. Everything that adds up to something unmistakable when you step back and look at the full picture. When Camilla walked into her coronation wearing the modified crown, it was a statement, a carefully chosen signal of her ultimate triumph. But that crown will one day sit on Catherine's head as queen. When that happens, the symbolic transfer will be so total and so unmistakable that everything Camilla's moment represented will effectively be overwritten. The redistribution of royal patronages has been ongoing, and sources suggest. Catherine has allegedly been involved in certain patronage decisions in ways that have quietly shaped that redistribution, ensuring the Parker Bowles' influence is systematically reduced. Camilla's personal security and future planning are also showing signs of strain. She previously sold Ray Mill House, her personal sanctuary. No press release, no lifestyle magazine feature, no carefully managed announcement, just a property that appeared on the market and disappeared from her portfolio. People do not sell their personal sanctuaries casually. They do not part with the one place that belongs entirely to them unless something has shifted fundamentally in how they see their own future. Right now, Camilla moves through multiple royal residences as a matter of course. That picture changes completely when the inevitable transition happens. The properties pass to William and Catherine. Buckingham Palace and Windsor Castle become their primary domains. Sources suggest her likely inheritance and future housing options are limited, consisting of properties valued at significant amounts but completely inadequate as a substitute. For the majestic position she currently occupies, she would go from queen consort with the full weight of the monarchy behind her to a dowager queen, living at the discretion of a man who grew up watching what she did to his mother and a woman who was fiercely protective of his mother's legacy. The family network is being dismantled piece by piece. Tom Parker Bowles' presence at official events has been curtailed. Laura Lopes' access to royal spaces is allegedly finished. The family's broader proximity to crown events is quietly narrowing. Sources suggest Catherine is dismantling it with a patience and thoroughness that speaks to genuine long-term intent, rather than temporary frustration. Even the king has found himself in an impossible position. He made a phone call to William that sources describe as one of the most difficult conversations between the father and son in decades. Not angry, not accusatory, quiet and pained. He is facing immense health challenges, maintaining his public duties with genuine discipline. But discipline is not the same as strength. Protecting Camilla's family would mean telling Catherine and William to restore access and privileges. William would not comply, and the king knows it. It would mean telling Catherine to stop her review of the estate. Catherine would not comply, and he knows that too. How do you argue against your son's grief over his mother when you are the reason that grief exists in the first place? There's a version of this story that looks like revenge. William and Catherine systematically dismantling everything Camilla built as payback for what she did to Diana. And there's another version that looks like something more considered and more lasting than revenge. Sources suggest the second version is closer to the truth. Simple revenge would look like Camilla publicly humiliated, stripped of everything in one dramatic moment. That is not what sources describe William and Catherine as building. Think about what Diana actually stood for, not the fairy tale image, but the real substance of what she did. She touched AIDS patients when the establishment was still treating the disease as something shameful. She walked through active minefields to make a political point about weapons killing civilians. She sat with homeless people and looked them in the eye and treated them as fully human. She did all of this against the active resistance of an institution that found her emotional directness threatening. She was right about all of it. The institution was wrong. Now William and Catherine run the modernizing institution. Sources suggest Catherine's modern estate reviews and administrative reforms are not simply good management practice. It is Diana's legacy expressed institutionally. The emotional intelligence, the public accountability, the genuine human connection. All of it is allegedly being built into the architecture of the monarchy they are constructing. Catherine's quiet, genuinely impactful work represents a living argument against performative royalty. The exact argument Diana made and paid everything to make. Here's what sources suggest Camilla is slowly and painfully coming to understand. She won the battle. She got the title. She got the coronation, the tiara, and the seat beside the king. But the war was never about the crown. It was about Diana and what Diana represented, and whether the institution would eventually become something worthy of the price she paid. William and Catherine are allegedly building that institution now. Not for revenge, but for Diana, and Camilla has no counter-strategy for that. You cannot argue against a legacy. You cannot litigate grief. You cannot outmaneuver a son who watched his mother die and spent decades deciding quietly and deliberately what to do about it. Diana never got to see what this monarchy could become. She got a Paris tunnel, 2 boys without a mother, and a family that barely lowered its flag. But sources suggest something is happening inside that palace right now that she never lived to see. Her son and her daughter-in-law moving together, quietly and permanently, reshaping everything Camilla built into something Diana would have recognized as hers. Not revenge. Something better than revenge. Legacy. And that. More than any property dispute or payroll decision or symbolic tiara, it's what sources describe as Camilla's darkest reality in decades. Behind the high stone walls of Windsor Castle, the shifts are occurring daily, undetected by the casual observer, but devastatingly clear to those inside the palace. Senior courtiers whisper about the systematic nature of these changes. In the past, royal transitions were marked by sudden, dramatic announcements that dominated the tabloid front pages for weeks. This time, the playbook is entirely different. It is a bloodless, paper-driven reorganization of the entire royal structure. By focusing entirely on administrative authority, Catherine and William are bypassing the traditional channels of palace drama, turning what could have been a public family feud into an undeniable, unassailable, institutional reality. For the Parker Bowles family, the realization of this shift came not with a dramatic confrontation, but with the quiet return of building access passes. Key assets, including access to crown transport, security detail schedules, and private quarters within the royal palaces, were quietly updated under the new estate guidelines. For decades, the family had enjoyed a status that hovered comfortably between private guests and public representatives of the crown. Catherine's review of the crown estate has effectively ended that ambiguity. Under the new rules, the line between working royals and private relations has been drawn with absolute permanent clarity. There are no exceptions, no special arrangements, and no appeals. Sources within the royal household suggest that Camilla's reaction to these moves has been one of deep, simmering frustration. For nearly 30 years, she worked tirelessly to rebuild her public image. Transitioning from the most disliked woman in Britain to queen consort, she played by the rules of the old palace guard, securing her family's future and reinforcing her position through careful alliances and quiet loyalty. Yet all that careful planning did not account for the sheer institutional power that would eventually fall to William and Catherine. The power of the crown estate, the absolute control over properties, and the shifting of patronage networks have rendered her hard-won alliances obsolete. This administrative reality is the true source of tension inside the family today. It is not an issue that can be solved with a simple apology or a family meeting at Sandringham. It is a structural redesign of the British monarchy, being carried out by a generation that remembers the pain of the past with perfect clarity. Every decision, from the reallocation of housing to the silent exclusion from official event rosters, is backed by legal and financial authority. As the transition of power continues, the world is watching the slow, quiet, and permanent emergence of a new royal era, one where the legacy of Princess Diana is no longer a memory to be managed, but the very foundation of the future crown.